Hey everyone. I'm pleased to introduce my colleague at Phillips 66 today, Melissa Erker. She's the Director of Government and Community Affairs. She'll reach her 24th service anniversary in July this year. And she actually started her career at the Edwardsville Intelligencer as a reporter prior to working in public relations and then later taking her position at the refinery. She grew up in Bethalto and now lives in the St. Louis region with her husband and children, but she considers this region, including Edwardsville, very much an important part of her home. So turn it over to Melissa.
Thanks, Megan. Yes, there's a few people in this room that I've known for a very long time, so it's always great to be back here. I know I haven't presented to Rotary in a few years, but here it may be more than 5. So good to be back in front of you guys, and thank you for allowing us this opportunity. So today I want to cover just a few things. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Phillips 66 as a company, a lot more about our Wood River Refinery, which is just down the road from here. And then 3 just topics of interest, which would be our environmental performance, our community outreach, and then also an upcoming project that will have a little bit of visibility in the next weekend after Memorial Day weekend. So, okay, so first, who are we? So Phillips 66 is a oil company with, hopefully it'll come back. So basically we have 4 main business interests, which are what people know the best, but probably not the thing that we focus on the most, which are our marketing and specialties. I think they'll come back. I can see it. But that is the brands that you see at the gas station. So Phillips 66 actually owns 0 gas stations though, but we brand our fuels under Conoco, Phillips, and the 76 brand throughout the country, as well as have the Jet brand, Across the Pond, Kendall Motor Oil, and a few other brands that you're familiar with. Then we have our midstream company, which we actually have operations here in the region. That's our terminals where we distribute products as well as all the pipelines. So we actually have a terminal in Cahokia, Illinois, as well as at Hartford, just down the road from the refinery. And then we have a chemicals business. So there's a lot of stuff I don't know about that business, but that's a production of plastics and other specialty products that are coming from the petroleum world. I often say everything in this room, it has likely a petroleum base, maybe not the aluminum chairs, but components of it, definitely. So we're more than just putting fuels in cars and airplanes. And finally, then refining is the business I know best. So I've worked down at the refinery for 24 years. That facility has been in our community for 100+ years. And we've had a lot of different ownership over the years, which I'll go through, but just a few important notes that we are the largest refinery in the Phillips 66 portfolio. It kind of ranges depending on different investments that facilities make, but between 8th and 12th largest refinery in the US operating today. We employ 850 local direct employed Phillips 66 employees, many of which live in these communities right up here in Edwardsville, Glen Carbon, and the surrounding communities. They seem to be popular for our folks. Also, we have about, on average, 300 to 450 daily contract employees who don't work directly for our company, but are on site with us each and every day. And then on periods of time where we have maintenance going on, like we just came out of what we call a turnaround, which is where we take parts of the refinery down to do a lot of maintenance, we can up our population by another 1,500 people for a period of 45 to 60 days. So we just are coming out of that and have seen a lot of activity, but those folks tend to invest a lot of sales in our community and are very important to the region. So our main products are transportation fuels, gasoline, diesel fuel, and jet fuel. Is that a weather warning? Everyone's phone's going off. Anyway, but we also can produce things like asphalt, petroleum coke, and we provide things like benzene and other byproducts that go into the chemical facility. Our products from our refinery mainly go into the St. Louis region, the Chicago region, and out through Indianapolis in Ohio. But at one time we were providing asphalt to over 19 states. So we're a pretty complex facility for what we do. For those who've been in this region for a long time, you probably knew that there were 3 refineries located in our community just down the hill. And over time, we're just one, but some of them closed and we bought parts of the others that used to be there. But we were the Shell facility until 1998 when Echelon was created by Shell and Texaco. I didn't include some of the smaller changes. I actually have lived through all of that. So it's been interesting. I have a lot of business cards that I don't use, but have logos on them. But then we were bought in 2000 by a small company called Tosco, which was then bought by Phillips Petroleum in 2001. In 2002, Conoco and Phillips came together to create ConocoPhillips. And then in 2012, the two companies decided, or the company ConocoPhillips decided to basically rearrange its portfolio and divest in the refining side. So a lot of times you hear about integrated oil companies. That means that you pull oil out of the ground and then refine it and then market it and do other things. We're not an integrated oil company. We do not pull any oil out of the ground, although that's a very important part of our energy industry and portfolio. We don't own any assets that pull oil out of the ground. But today we are part of Phillips 66. We actually at Wood River are part of a joint venture with a Canadian company known as Synovus. So we're actually a subsidiary called WRB, which everyone's like, well, what does that stand for? It stands for Wood River, which is us, and our sister refinery in Borger, Texas, WRB. That's how they got that. But anyway, but we are all employees of Phillips 66, and Phillips 66 is the operator of that facility. I will tell people that I will respond to any of these. When I give my outreach dollars, I like when people call us Phillips 66, but I often still hear ConocoPhillips, and every now and then a little Shell in there too. But we are Phillips 66. So, in a world, my poor lunch table got to hear my litany of my legislative world. But this is something really important. There's a lot of focus, obviously, on the environmental side of everything that we do. And in our industry, we take it very serious. Phillips 66 wants to be a leader in terms of how we operate in our communities and, in everything that we do. So I think it's really important to show that we've put quite a lot of environmental investment. And I'm going to get to what we've done at Wood River here specifically. But this is the company's investments since 2002, and then it can show you the emission reductions that we've achieved. Now, obviously, we would love to be zero. I will tell you that the investments to get to zero are really going to be difficult, because the easy things or the projects where you can make investment and get big bangs for your buck. And so today, as companies continue to make investments, they're going to get small reductions especially for what they have to spend. But again, the United States is a leader when it comes to environmental performance in our industries across the board, not just in oil refining. I heard this statistic once, and I know that it's true, that our 12 US refineries owned by Phillips 66 have fewer emissions in the US than our one facility that we own in Humber, England, which is across the pond. And it's not because Humber is doing anything wrong. It's just that the US's environmental standards are that much greater than anyone else's around the world. And by the way, the UK and the European Union are pretty strict on their environmental regs too. So when you look at just investment around the globe, why do people invest outside of Europe and outside of the US? It's because they can do it without putting all the investments in that we are doing. Not that people aren't investing outside of those areas without environmental thought, but we just know we do it, and we do it more, and we do it better. So here at Wood River, here in our own community, our chart is very similar. We've spent $1.1 billion in environmental investments since 2002. And by the way, those are not return projects, so that we don't get anything on a return on investment other than making sure that we're being accountable to a sustainable climate in our region. So but this is not about running better rates or anything. These environmental projects are about reducing emissions in this region. One of the significant drops you see is between 2008 and 2010, and that's when we put in our wet gas scrubbers. You all will know what that is, even if you're not technical, because those are the big steam plumes that you can see even from up here on the hill, that you can see as you're going down into our area in Roxana. Those steam plumes from the middle of our plant are wet gas scrubbers, and they're a technology that is used to really scrub components of, I believe it's, I always get this wrong, but I think it's NOx and SOx, and so nitrous oxide and sulfur dioxide out of the air. And so that's also the type of technology you see at power plants. So if you go up to Grafton and you see the power plant at Portage Sioux, you're going to see that. Or if you're going up 55 to Springfield, the power plant right there as you're kind of going around the bend is also using that technology. So a lot of people see that as smoke. If you're my children who are now 16 and 18, they've grown up knowing that that is steam and not smoke, and will correct anyone, including their textbooks at school. So mom kind of beats that in their head. This is just one more chart. It's kind of an eye chart in a room like this. But the purple line at the bottom is Phillips 66. The other lines are our peers. The data where we get this pulled from won't tell us who's who, but it just shows you that per our peer emissions benchmarks, we're leading the pack in terms of environmental, environmental emissions and the least amount. So we're just proud of that, and an important, we try and put our money where our mouth is. So in my world, I do basically anything that anyone doesn't want to do at the refinery. So I get to do a lot of fun things, but one of my staples is on community outreach. So I just wanted to talk about that a lot, because I know the criterion is something that we've supported for numbers of years. And it's cool to hear like the money that you guys raise, I know does a lot of great things, but the CEO program throughout the region and several of the other places is near and dear to my heart. So it's cool to hear how that support comes along. But so at the refinery, we basically work in giving pillars, which are education, environment, and health and safety. And then we kind of have a catch-all bucket, which is health and human services. But we have a local budget that we are usually working with about $350,000, and we try and spread the love and the wealth across the communities as we can. There's a lot of charities out there, and we get a lot of people from St. Louis asking for $100,000 donations. Well, I don't know, I can get a lot more bang for a buck for a $5,000 donation in a community like this and see the action at work than I can at $100,000 across the river. And that's not my community anyway. So the St. Louis region is an important part of this region, but we want our dollars kind of in our near fence line neighbors. We're also big supporters of the United Way. We have an amazing employee and volunteer program where our employees, when they give money to not-for-profits, they can have that matched. And employees' volunteer time also is matched in dollars if they put it in their system. So for every hour that an employee gives to an organization, they can get $25 back, up to $4,000 a year. And the cool part of that program is sometimes our employees are too busy, but their spouses aren't. So maybe in Megan's case, so Megan's working all the time, but maybe her husband has a little bit more time because he's with Edwardsville Bands and to do things in the summer, and his hours can count under her program. So it's really cool. But that's been very important to a lot of our employees. So we're proud of that. And then we try and do a lot of outreach in the form of just education. So we have a community advisory panel. The community advisory panel is about 22 local residents, business leaders, and other folks that are important stakeholders to the refinery. they meet with refinery leadership each and every month and discuss the topics that they want to hear. So if they want to hear about environmental performance, we're going to talk about environmental performance. If they want to hear about our emergency response capabilities, they're going to hear about that. We actually did a live fire training with them one time, so that was pretty cool. So they kind of got to see what we do, how our people are trained in the just in case mode, and they actually put out live fires themselves. So but that's great in the sense that we get to do that. And then of course we want to be involved in local boards, and like Megan being a part of Rotary is an important thing to me, is that we want our people, not just our leaders, to be part of the communities that they work and live in. We want all our employees to participate where they can. Here's a breakdown of our 2020 contributions. So it's kind of education gets a lot of times the biggest bucket, then that human services, health and human services, environmental, and then health and safety. Health and safety usually is along the line of law enforcement, or I was on the radio this morning talking about the Madison County Code Red program and things like that we support. So last year, although my local budget was $350,000, we gave over $650,000 to the communities. And we were able to do that because of, first of all, our corporation gave us some special funding, especially relating to COVID and how that worked. So this is something never guaranteed, but we're always going to take. But basically, we were able to give 4 food pantries, including the Glen Ed Food Pantry here, $25,000 each, right at the onset of COVID last spring. And then, we gave 4 different organizations, Alton Memorial Hospital, Madison County Health Department, the Glen Ed Pantry, and the Alton Crisis Food, that $25,000 each. And then in November, we came back and hit the food pantries again, which again, we gave to Glen Ed, and we gave those each another $12,500. So we try and do things, and we look at what's going on in the community, and we think about how we can help. And we also try and do things where, like, our employees got turkeys for Thanksgiving. And a lot of them gave them back and gave them to people in the community, which I thought was super cool. But so the other part of that $650,000 is the matching gifts that go into our community, which is amazing. Last year, our matching gifts increased by 40%, even at a time when it was uncertain for a lot of what was going on in our world. Phillips 66 was very fortunate. We're a 24/7 operation. We continue to operate throughout COVID. Our employees, some of our staff employees did go home for a period of 8 weeks, but many of our other employees, we don't have that choice. We have to keep the plant running. But we were very fortunate not to lay any of our employees off during that time. And then my number kind of got messed up there. That's okay. Slides are always weird sometimes, but we raised not quite 200,000 for United Way. We had 41 community service days, so our employees get community service days. So at a time which a lot of organizations weren't accepting volunteers because of the unknown in COVID, we still got people with boots on the ground, and we logged more than 4,200 volunteer hours. So cool thing about that, I talked about volunteer hours, $25 for every hour you work. In April, we put a focus on that called Good Energy. And some of our hours went right here in Edwardsville to the micro forest that the Children's Museum is doing. The Children's Museum is near and dear to our hearts too. We actually have a new display that will open when they open here in early June, when that's allowed by the state rules. And that's called the STEM Forest, and it's highly interactive in terms of use of virtual technologies. So we're really excited to see that. We also put employees out at the Treehouse Wildlife Center, and they did a massive cleanup with those folks. Again, an organization near and dear to our hearts. I think we have another good volunteer project coming up in June with the Girl Scouts. We present a STEM camp, and then we have several other things that we're planning throughout the year. So we're really excited about that. We think it's important to put boots on the ground and be in our communities. And there's so many incredible opportunities here locally. Okay, the third thing that I wanted to talk about is that if you go down 143, head to Alton, you'll see that there's going to be a road closure. And on June 5th and 6th. And so I wanted to talk about that. And it's kind of a cool project for us. So, we operate a lot of pipelines coming in and out of the refinery itself. We have a lot of lines that go from our facility, which would be on the right side of the picture, down to the Mississippi River, where you can kind of see the lagoons and some areas that we operate. So the pipelines that we had that right now go under the levee were what we would call near end of life. And we do inspections regularly, and we felt like it was time to replace them. And for integrity purposes on the levee and for inspection purposes for us, we decided to bring those pipelines above ground. So if you're driving on Route 3 right now, you'll see staged some really cool pipe bridge structures on the side of the road. They're pretty massive and they look really cool. But as we were designing this project, the other thing that we try and do is be innovative so that we don't impact the community too much. So if anyone drives the 270 corridor right now through North County, there's a lot of work going on there, and they have cranes in the middle of the road, and there's curves along the way to avoid it. And I may commute that way a bit, and I don't really like it, especially when they make a road change. So we decided that we wanted to use new technologies and best practices to put this project in place. So this project basically will replace lines that range from 47 to 87 years old. A portion of these lines will be about 2,500 feet above ground. And basically we're using some cool new technologies to do this. So I'm going to walk through this, and I hope this works. But instead of building a crane in the middle of the road to basically lift these sections over the road, what we're going to do next weekend is we're going to use a crawling system that's going to crawl the pipeline on two ends down the road, turn it around into the levee, and place it over the levee. So here's kind of what it's going to look like. So if you look at the top of the picture, you see the two kind of red type of, I don't know, we would call them SPMTs, which are a mechanical thing that moves the big equipment. And on top of that is the pipe bridge. This is would be Rand Avenue and Route 3. And this is what's going to happen. It's going to crawl across the road, make a turn, and then be set in place. And so in order to achieve that, we're going to close Route 3 from 143 to Hawthorne Avenue, which is right there at the Hartford Water Tower, for 2 days next weekend. We hope to accomplish it in one day, as long as Mother Nature and all the mechanics of the equipment cooperate. But that's what's going on. So there's been some media on that. You guys probably don't use that corridor that much, but if you're down there and you've seen that, that's what's going on. And then there'll be a few minor closures 2 other times this summer to place a few other pieces of equipment. So anyway, it's always fun to see the amazing engineering marvels that have happened at that plant and continue to happen as we work on our integrity and mechanics and make sure that we're always operating safely. So anyway, so that is what I brought today. Are there any questions or anything you want me to talk about that I didn't?